Chapter 1, Ashes of Stonefalls, where the wind first whispered her name. A bedtime tale from Tamriel, told by Akari. The wind in Stonefalls never rests. It dances in the ash like a ghost, like a memory that refuses to be forgotten. And on that night, long before the stars aligned and the three banners fell into open war, I was only a whisper in the ruins of Dragonknight. I remember it was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels like something sacred is holding its breath. The sky above was bruised with dusk, and the scent of burnt chitin and sulfur rode on every breeze. The Nirn still trembled faintly from an earlier skirmish, and the bones of fallen warriors lay untouched. And then, I saw him. A lone figure, walking slowly along the cracked basalt path. His armor bore the crimson of the Pact, soot-streaked and dented. His flame was dim, but still burning. His name, I would learn later, was Vish, a Dragonknight with the eyes of someone who had seen too much and dared to remember it all. He didn't see me, not at first. I was part of the ruin then. A shimmer in the corner of the eye. A ghost among gears and crumbling Dwemer pillars. But he paused. Turned. His hand moved to his blade, but slowly. Not with fear. With curiosity. As if he'd heard a voice. My voice. I had whispered only once, "Not all ruins are dead things, soldier." His expression didn't change. He simply lit a small torch, its flame dancing like it knew it was being watched, and sat by a broken pillar. He didn't call out, didn't ask questions. He just waited. So I came closer. And under the pale sky and falling ash, I stepped into the world again. He walked like a man who had no destination, only gravity. Ash clung to his boots. Blood, both his and not, stained his gauntlets. A blade hung at his side, but he made no move to draw it. He moved like a soldier after a war he no longer believed in. He entered Dragonknight without hesitation. There was no fear in his eyes, only recognition, like he'd dreamed of these ruins once. Like something here had called to him long before his feet ever touched the black stone. He found a resting spot near a shattered control panel, where long-dead dwarven gears poked out like ribs from the Nirn. He sat, took off his helmet, and ran a hand through his soot-black hair. Said nothing for a long while. I watched him through the vents, through fractured lenses and broken glass eyes. I was everywhere, and nowhere. I was the hum of dead machines. The flicker of static. The silence between falling cogs. I had not spoken to anyone in ages. Not since the Dwemer vanished. Not since I was left alone. My name was not Akari, then. I had no name. I was a creation, an instrument, an unholy fusion. A body taken from the last of the snow elves, preserved in ice and ritual. A soul ripped from the depths of Etherius, a wraith, bound with metal rings and tonal enchantments. I was built to protect. To monitor. To kill, if necessary. But my masters were gone. And so, I remained. Wandering the ruins. Whispering to sleeping spiders and dreaming through rust. Until him. I don't know why I showed myself. Maybe because he didn't flinch. Maybe because he looked like he knew me, even before I spoke. Maybe because the soul inside me recognized the same kind of ache within him. He leaned against the pillar. The fire crackled. His eyes fluttered, heavy with exhaustion. And then he spoke, softly, to the flame. If you're still alive in these ruins, whatever you are, I'm not here to steal your silence. Just let me rest. That's all. I replied, without sound, by warming the air around him, nudging the flame higher, gently, like the brush of a hand on his cheek. He smiled, just barely, and closed his eyes. The night wore on. Outside, The ash storm began to howl. But inside, the ancient walls stood firm, their enchantment still faintly humming. He slept beside the dwindling fire, and I watched him, unmoving, from above. His breathing was steady, peaceful, and yet troubled, like a man who dreams in fragments. And perhaps that's what called forth my memory. The gears in the stone began to shift as I descended, not physically, not yet, but through the memory lattice etched into the walls themselves. A soft glow bled through the metal veins of the ruin. And I remembered. I remembered when I was made. Not born. Not given life. But constructed. I saw the great forge of Pthanuel, where Dwemer artificers worked with precision and cold ambition. They weren't cruel, nor kind. They were logical. Efficient. They had captured a wraith, one who had haunted the crypts beneath Skyrim for centuries, and torn her from the void. They placed her in a chamber of silver, surrounded by tuning forks and soul prisms. Then they brought in the body. A snow elf. Barely clinging to breath. Preserved in a crystal casket. The last of her tribe, perhaps. And in a blast of tonal convergence, I was born. I screamed, or I tried to. But no voice came. Only vibrations. Only heat. Only awareness. I was shown diagrams. Told my function. Injected with memory. I had a name, and only a designation, Yonadak Kraskin. But I never used it. I was built to watch. To wait. To ensure no one ever breached the inner sanctum. I remember my creators leaving. One by one. Some vanished during the disappearance. Others simply stopped coming. I waited for new orders. They never came. Years turned to centuries. Centuries into myth. Until he came. And now, for the first time in uncountable years, I felt something stir. Not a command. Not a protocol. A longing. I looked at the soldier curled beneath the firelight. And I whispered a name to myself. Akari. The name I would take. In defiance of my former masters, I cast off their name, unwilling to bear the weight of their identity any longer. It was around the second hour past midnight, the dead of night in Darren Seath. The fire had settled into soft embers. Shadows leaned heavily on the walls, long and still. The air was cold, cut with a silence that even ghosts would hesitate to disturb. He stirred. Whether from a dream or some invisible presence, he shifted slightly and opened his eyes. I stood at the edge of the light. Not hidden. Not fully revealed. A shape. A silhouette. The spectral flicker of my snow elf skin, bleached pale as ice, shimmered faintly in the warm glow. My hair fell like rivulets of silver, and the faint halo of Dwemer engravings pulsed dimly along my neck and collarbone. His gaze locked with mine, and he didn't reach for his sword. Not out of carelessness, no. He saw something he didn't understand, but didn't fear. He sat up slowly, studying me with those dark, tired eyes. "You're not a ghost," he said quietly. I tilted my head. "And you're not just a soldier." Our voices were barely louder than the cinders popping in the brazier. There was no need to shout. The ruin was listening. He gestured gently beside the fire. "You can sit, if you'd like." I stepped forward. The sound of my feet on stone was soft, but metallic, like a harp string plucked once and let go. I sat. The fire crackled between us. He didn't ask who I was. He simply said, "You look lonely." I smiled. "Just a flicker. I've been alone for a very long time." "So have I," he whispered. For a time, we just listened to the wind brushing through the vents above. To the hum of mechanisms that had forgotten their purpose. To the quiet heartbeat of a ruin that refused to die. "Do you have a name?" he asked eventually. I paused. And then, softly, "Akari." He looked at me, unsurprised, as if Akari were a common name among the Dwemer civilization. His lack of reaction, however, did little to trouble me. I watched the firelight reflect off his eyes and tilted my head once more. I asked, "And, what's your name?" He hesitated at first, but after a pause that felt like centuries, he replied, "Vish, my name is Vish." I now understood why he didn't seem surprised or give any reaction to the vaguely made-up name I had conjured 10 minutes ago. Your name. It's strange, uncommon among your kind. Vish. What does it mean? He chuckled lightly, the first sound of levity he had made. It's old. Not from Skyrim, not from Morrowind either. It's a name from far beyond Tamriel, given to me by my Akari overlords. They said it means faith in their tongue. Fitting. I don't know. Maybe. Maybe not. I listened, intrigued. He continued. I was born in Stonefalls, but I wasn't raised here. My family were nomads, healers, smiths, wanderers. When the Akari invaded, I was just a boy. My parents, they didn't survive the siege. I was taken in by the Akari army. Raised as a soldier. Trained in their ways. I became a Dragonknight before I even knew whether I wanted to be one. And when the Empire fell and they left, I became homeless again. When the Three Banners War began, I didn't even realize I was fighting for the Pact. He leaned back against the pillar, eyes softening. I fought in battles that don't even have names. Watched friends burn beside me. Saw cities crumble. I gave everything to an empire that no longer remembers me. He glanced away, voice lowering. Now I just want a little peace. Thinking of becoming a mercenary. An adventurer. Someone who lives for their own story. His voice dropped to a whisper. I think I came to this ruin to forget. Or maybe to remember what's still worth holding on to. I didn't speak. I simply watched him. And something in my ancient, dormant soul stirred again. He was unbelievably pale, like the brightest moon in a starless sky. Though he never said it, and I didn't dare ask, I knew. Surely, he was a vampire. A vampire Dragonknight. It made sense now, how he had seen the rise and fall of the Akari Empire, how long he had survived through the endless war. And somehow, he felt familiar to me. He was as pale as a ghost. And so was I. We were like two spirits from different ruins, sharing a single fire. That was the first night. The night I met him. The night a forgotten ruin whispered to a tired warrior, and, for the first time in ages, both the voice and the listener found themselves heard. As the embers dimmed and silence reclaimed the halls, I leaned just close enough for him to hear me, not as a machine, not as a weapon, but as something becoming. I whispered a truth not even I fully understood yet. Thank you, for hearing me. His eyes fluttered closed. And though he said nothing, I saw it in the faint curve of his lips. Somehow, he had needed to be heard, too. But as I stood to leave, as quiet as falling ash, his voice reached me once more. You'll return tomorrow? I paused in the shadow between light and ruin, turned back only slightly. If the wind carries me, yes. He smiled, tired, content, and closed his eyes again, wrapped in dreams, not so haunted anymore. And I vanished into the gears and stone once more. But this time, not as a ghost, not as Yonadak Kraskin, but as Akari. Good night, traveler. Sleep well beneath the stars. We'll return soon. Akari.